Hello, my name is Andres Vanax, and welcome to my channel. I called it Astronomy Meets Christianity because the only way to make sure that a particular event happened on a particular date is to tie it to an astronomical event. Um, so far, we're trying to track the 15th year of Tiberius. Um, Tiberius Caesar was a Roman emperor that came after Augustus Caesar, and Augustus Caesar was a Roman emperor who was initially called Octavian, that came after Julius Caesar. So there's a series of a list of Roman consuls, two people that used to rule over Rome, and it's a sequential list. So if you count the number of pairs of names on that list, you'll know how many years have passed. So the basic assumption is that the list is correct, but I'll demonstrate here that it's not true. It's off by 1 year. And the way we're going to find out for sure is by tying it to the death of Augustus Caesar. Now, there are several astronomical events that happened around that time, and because he was so famous, they were recorded by historians. So, Ovid, a poet that lived around, or wrote around 50 years after Julius Caesar's death, he says that the Luna's chariot was speckled with blood, spattered with blood. Luna's chariot is, of course, the moon, which means the moon was either red or reddish. Looking for a umbral eclipse, which is the main dark area of the eclipse. No lunar eclipses could be seen around those years, and also during those months. But then we can also look for a penumbral eclipse. A penumbral eclipse is the wider area with where the shadow of the Earth still makes the moon look red or reddish. And two dates popped out: March 23rd of minus 42, and April 22nd of minus 42. Now, an astronomical year uses a zero, so you have 180. The year before that is 0, and the 1 year before that is minus 1. We'll call them 80 years or astronomical years. Years BC is you take the negative number, take a negative of it, add 1. So minus 42, take a negative, will be 42, add 1 will be 43, so it will be 43 BC. And this shows the problem. If Ovid is correct, and Julius Caesar died either March 23rd or April 22nd during the full moon of March, using a lunar calendar, which will be the Ides of March. Then the list is wrong. So how do we know for sure? I mean, Ovid was a poet. It's a poem. Did he take poetic license? How do we find out? And we can find out for sure with certainty by looking at what happened shortly after he died. After he died, there was a funeral in which he was cremated in a fire. And then there were some games, funeral games, that were held in his honor. On the 7th day of his game, or during the 7 days of his games, something was seen in the sky, and the descriptions are either it was a comet or it was a star. Nobody really knew what it was, but something impressive enough that eventually Julius Caesar was named the god because he was assumed to have ascended to heaven. And we will look at that now. If you want to know with certainty the dates when Jesus Christ did some events and when things happened, please like and subscribe to this channel. Not only will you learn the things that happen and when it happened, you'll learn how to investigate yourself. That's the main thing I'm doing this. I want to show people how to do it themselves. So please like and subscribe. There are various historians, Roman historians, that tell us that what happened. Now, Suetonius was about 100 years after the events. He lived from 69 to 122. And he tells us at this link that Julius Caesar died in the Ides of March. Let's go to that website now. Let's make a new one here. Let's go to that website. It's available online. Suetonius wrote something called The Lives of the 12 Caesars. He talked about 12 of the emperors. And in this one, he's talking about the life of Julius Caesar, 1 and 12. So it's a long read. He died in the 56th year of his age and was numbered among the gods. Not only by formal decree, so it was formally decreed a god. And then he says, for at the first of the games, which his heir Augustus gave in honor of his apotheosis, a comet shone for 7 successive days, rising above the 11th hour, and was believed to be the soul of Caesar, who had been taken up to heaven. And this is why a star is set upon the crown of his head in his statute. Notice that they either called it a star or a comet. They didn't really know what it was. They couldn't tell. It was something new. So it was voted in that hall in which he slain to be walled. It was voted that the hall in which he was slain to be walled up, so they closed it up, and that the Ides of March be called the day of parricide. Now, why is that? Parricide means to kill your own father. That's because Brutus, famous for for Shakespeare saying it, to Brutus, he killed his own father. He was adopted son of Julius Caesar. And he thought, in his mind, that he was saving the Republic, saving the Roman Republic from the dictator that his father had become. So, other quotes from Suetonius was that very interestingly, and we have confirmation it was the Ides of March, because a seer or a Roman prophet had told Julius Caesar, hey, beware of the Ides of March. So in the morning when Julius Caesar is walking towards the Senate on his way to get killed, he passes by the seer that happened to be in the palace. And he tells him, hey, what about your prophecy? It's the Ides of March and nothing happened. And he was laughing at Spurina, the name of the augur or prophet, and called him a false prophet because the Ides of March were come without bringing him any harm. And Spurina replied that the Ides of March had come, but they had not gone. The day was not over. Oh my God. And still, Julius Caesar ignored the omen and the prophecy and went on to his death. We can verify that he died in the year Marcus Antonius was consul. And we see that in the list of Roman consuls, Marcus Antonius. So we know for a fact he died on what the list claims to be 44 BC, and we know it's wrong now, it's 45 BC. And then he says, you too, my child, blah, blah, blah. And then the conspirators had intended, after slaying him, to drag his body to the Tiber, to the river Tiber, confiscate his property and revoke his decrees. But they didn't do it because they were afraid of Marcus Antonius, the consul, and Lepidus, the master of the horse. So Marcus Antonius and Lepidus were not enemies of Julius Caesar. So they kind of held back. I mean, that shows you they weren't even going to bury him. They were just going to throw him in the river. Later, at the behest of Marcus Antonius and others, they decided to read his will, and in his will he named Gaius Octavius. And this is important. If they had not read the will, we won't have Emperor Augustus. The young kid Gaius Octavius was only 18 years old at the time. He became later the emperor, and they gave him the title Augustus for his successes. In the will, he adopted Gaius Octavius. And on top of that, he gave a bunch of money, 300 sesterces. I don't know what amount corresponds to American dollars, but he gave a substantial amount of money to each man, to each citizen of Rome. I don't know if it's the city of Rome or every single person in Rome, but it was a ton of money. As a result, the population started getting angry at the people that killed him. And the public opinion started shifting towards those that supported Julius Caesar against those that killed him and tried to save the republic. The funeral was announced after reading the will, and then a pyre was erected in Capius Martius. So they were going to burn him next to Julia. I believe that was his wife, maybe. But the interesting thing is when describing, not that things don't happen immediately. They read the will and the funeral is announced. They were not even going to have a funeral. They're going to dump it on the river. They decided to have a funeral, so they announced a funeral. Then they had to erect a pyre. Then they had to carry the bier on the rostra through the streets so it can be burned. And then, so there's a time element. There's several days pass. It's not immediate. And then on the morning or in the day that the pyre set on fire, two beings with swords by their sides and brandishing a pair of darts set fire to it with blazing torches. Now, I claim that two beings with the swords was an astronomical event. And I'll show you how. Now, after the funeral came the funeral games. So Suetonio says he died on the 56th year of his age and was numbered among the gods by formal decree. And the first of the games, which Augustus gave in honor, so Octavian held games in successive years, so this was the first of the games. A comet shone for 7 successive days, rising about the 11th hour. Now, the 11th hour is interesting. To us, the 11th hour is 11 in the morning, or it could be 11 at night. To the Romans, they divided the day and the night into 12 hours. So the 11th hour was either right before sunset or right before sunrise. And we'll figure out that, as I'll show, it happened right before sunrise. So he matches the description given by Suetonius. And was believed to be a soul of Caesar which had been taken up to heaven. This is why a star is set upon the crown of his head in his statue. And again, you're not confused. They use both a star and a comet because they didn't quite know what it was. Other historians in this link, if you click on that link, it's a collection of various historians. Let's make a new page for that. If we go to this link, he gives a more descriptive, better description of the events. So this is a summary by various here. He lists Cicero, he lists Plutarch, Nicolaus of Damascus, Cicero again, and Livy, somewhere Suetonius over here, Livy, whatever. So it's a collection of quotes from various historians. And the interesting part is that March 20th. It says on the 17th of March, on the Festival Liberalia, and Antony, Marcus Antonius, he summoned the Senate to decide what to do. The liberators, basically the guys that killed him, were hoping that Caesar would be declared a tyrant and invalidate his will. But Antony proposed that the assassins receive amnesty. So in exchange for amnesty, he got all of Caesar's measures ratified. So there was pending legislation that Caesar was pushing for. So he says, okay, well, let's just approve all his stuff. And they ratified Caesar's acta. Now, it was also agreed that Caesar, Julius Caesar, should receive a public funeral. Up to that point, he wasn't even going to be buried. This is horrible. Well, depends who you're talking to. I mean, he was a dictator that had taken over Rome after hundreds of years being a democratic republic. So on the next day, the 18th, they authorized the validation and publication of Caesar's will. Now, on the 20th, Antony read Caesar's will. And then he says, an emotional play of Caesar's corpse was cremated by impassioned mob, was inflamed by the news that Caesar had left 300 sesterces to every citizen. So this implies that the corpse was cremated right after reading the will, but I'll assure you that that's not the case. They don't really tell you when it happened. And blah blah blah, this will happen after. So then we have these 3 dates. We have the 17th, they decided to have amnesty. On the 18th, they decided to read the will. On the 20th, they read the will, and the public find out that everybody was going to be 300 sesterces richer. And after that, the body was burned. So now we need to talk about the funerary rites. The Romans. How soon after dying did they bury somebody? If you were poor, they bury you the next day. But it turns out that they had a tradition of mourning for 9 days. And this survives now. This survives now, for example, when the popes die. The popes die, they have a funeral, but then nowadays, after the funeral, they hold the Nomen Dialis, which is 9 days of mourning. But for the Romans, they held the 9 days before the body was buried or cremated. And we can find it in Wikipedia. Wikipedia tells us second funeral feast and rites called the Nomen Dialis were held 9 days or more after death. Sacrifice was often made, blah, blah, blah. So I will count the 9 days of the Novendiales. So starting with the day of March, and this is the lunar day. Because if the day was either March 23rd or April 22nd, it was not following the Julian calendar. So the reason for that is the calendar was completely messed up and had only fixed the year prior. So they were still using the lunar calendar that was based on the when the moon went completely dark, or it was a calends. They call it the calends, the new moon, and the full moon, which was the 15th. So on the 15th, which was the lunar day of March, for the new moon, we had the assassination. Counting the day after as the first day of Novendiales, the 9 days of mourning, you have 9 days, which brings us to the 24th, and that's when I estimate the pyre was set ablaze by the two beings. The next day starts the first day of the funeral games, and then on the 31st of the lunar day of March is the start of Julius. Missing from this the actual days. Insert. So if this is the Julian day, so if this is the 23rd of March, March had 31 days. So we should see the start of Julius on the 8th of April. Now, from here, from our list of possible lunar eclipses, it could have been March 23 or possibly April 22nd if there was a because lunar months are only 29 days and a half on average. After 12 months, you're missing 11 days from the year. After 3 years, you're missing an entire month. So every 3 years, you have to intercalate or add an additional 13th month to bring all the lunar months in sync with the stars. So there's a slight possibility that maybe that year there was an intercalation. So we'll check. So we have two possible dates, and we need to decide. So we should be able to see the start of Julius on the 8th. So if we go to Stellarium, and we pick a date of 42 4 8. That'll be 43 BC, yeah. And we need to make sure we're in Rome. So come to here. Yeah, we're in Rome. I'm using a higher resolution. Hopefully you can see it better. And then, okay, you can barely see this. We go to landscape. Let's say show ground. And then we go to early in the morning. There we have it. So early in the morning, around 4 in the morning local time in Rome, Earth Rome, on, I'll show the day, time, show the week, day of the week. So on Sunday, Oh, that's also relevant. On Sunday, which was the last day of the games, at 4 in the morning, they started seeing Venus and Jupiter in conjunction, rising above the horizon. And morning started happening. Dawn came around 5 in the morning. And finally, around 5:45, they couldn't see it anymore. So early risers that were getting out of their houses to walk towards the place where the games were held, I don't know if it was in Campus Martius, they could see it, the Star of Julius. And that's why Julius Caesar was declared to be a god. This proves several things. This eliminates the second choice, and he verifies that it was on 43 BC, and he verifies that there was an actual lunar eclipse, because we have verified it through the Star of Julius. Now, regarding the Noven Dialis, the 9 days of mourning, so let's see, on 17, what is it that I claim? What Suetonius told us? No, the historians. Amnesty, read the will. Approved, read the will. Alright. So on the 17th, they decided declare amnesty and burial will be held. Here, decided to read the will on the 18th. On the 20th, read the will, and Augustus, or he was called Octavian, declared heir, and then give 300 sesterces to every Roman. That's probably every Roman in Rome, not every Roman in the entire empire, but we don't know. He gave a ton of money. So, we know that he hadn't been buried on the 20th day, or having been burned. And so we have 1, 2, 3, 4 days left for the Noven Dialis. Now, could they have seen the let's zoom in on that. Zoom in on Venus. Could they have seen it on the 29th of March? We go back. No, it can't be that far. Yeah. So we need to go. If they didn't hold the 9 days of mourning, and they did it right after the 20th, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4 days. So 4 days before, it wasn't a conjunction. You could distinctly see Venus and Jupiter. So that proves that they did held the 4 days of the complete 9 days of mourning. Now it could be this day, or it could be that day, or that day, but not that. So the only question is, did the first day of the morning start the day after or on the same day? I think it started the day after. But overall, it doesn't matter. What matters is the year. We're determining the year in which Julius Caesar died. Now, regarding the part set of blaze by two beings, that happened on the very 1st of April. So let's see what happened on the 1st of April. There. On the 1st of April, early in the morning, everybody could see two beings in the sky, and then the fire was set ablaze. The two beings were Jupiter, the planets Jupiter, and the planet Venus. It all happened on the 11th hour because the sun hadn't risen yet. It was the 11th hour, 11th hour, 11th hour, and then until sunrise. And here's the sun. And sunrise happened at 5:50 or so. And that's when the first hour of the day started. Actually, that's wrong. Well, it depends. The 11th hour is the hour before, an hour before sunrise. Which is all right. It's 4 in the morning is when you first see it. So, I think it was Plutarch that said that it appeared on the north. That's a bad translation or bad information. It appeared on the east. So there we have it. We have the timeline of the date. Now we know exactly when he died. He died on the 23rd. They even tell us at what hour he died, the historians. We know that two beings were seen lighting the fire. That was Venus and Jupiter. We know there was a conjunction of Venus and Jupiter that they couldn't figure out if it was a star or if it was a comet. On the statue, they called him, they put as a star. On the coins, they put a star. The question is, what do we do about the list? The list is wrong. It's off by 1 year. It's been verified by astronomical means. And there is more. There's more information. And to find it, we're going to look at the book or books of Cassius Dio. It's a Roman historian who lived 165 to 235 AD, and that wrote in Greek. And his various books are published as 9 volumes. And I really recommend that you download all of them. We're going to use many of them during our successive videos. The nice thing about him is he lists the events that happen on each during the rule of each Roman consul. So he almost goes year by year. In the years that are interesting, in the times that are interesting, he goes year by year. And then there's a gap of 20 years or 10 years, and things are interesting again, and he goes one by one. So it's very useful. So if we look at the Cassius Dio Roman History, Volume 4, Volume 4, yeah, it's up here, Cassius Dio Volume 4. And we make a search for star, you'll see that he quotes this for the year that Julius Caesar died. When, however, a certain star during all those days appeared in the north towards the evening, which some called a comet, claiming they had foretold the usual occurrences, while the majority, instead of believing this, ascribed it to Caesar, interpreting it to mean that he had become immortal and had been received into the number of the stars. Octavius then took courage and set up the Temple of Venus. In the Temple of Venus, a bronze statue of him with a star above his head. And when this act was also allowed, no one trying to prevent it through fear of the populace, then at least some of the other decrees already passed in honor of Caesars were put into effect. So they called the month of July after him in the course of certain festivals of Thanksgiving. And they sacrificed one special day in memory of his name. This really sparked my curiosity. I mean, it was seen during the evening. Now, it also says that Octavian set up a bronze statue for him in the Temple of Venus. But when Julius Caesar died, Octavian was just an 18-year-old kid. After the reading of the will, he came by his inheritance. And a year later, he used all the money to hire several Roman legionaries. I think he hired 3 legions and marched towards Rome because he intended to punish and kill all the people that assassinated his stepfather. And through the force of arms, he managed to reach a deal in which he, Marcus Antonius, who had been a consul, and Lepidus, who had been the leader of the horse, substantial individuals, the 3 of them decided to divide amongst themselves the Roman Empire. It's only then that he acquired power. So I think it's only then that he could have set up the Temple of Venus, the bronze statue of Julius Caesar in the Temple of Venus. So this is kind of important. Was there a second sighting of the star of Julius in the evening? So we can check. We start with the time the star of Julius was seen, which is April 8th of minus 42, which was 43 BC. So we come to Stellarium, and we put April 8th minus 42. And then to be able to see when Venus and Jupiter line up again, we can remove the ground. We can remove the atmosphere visualization. We can fix our view on Venus by searching Venus. And then from that day, we can start increasing the days. So Jupiter starts going away. Venus starts getting closer to the sun. Now, if Venus is ahead of the sun, that means it's visible before the sun comes out of the horizon, so it's in the morning. But if Venus is below the sun, then, so here we have a conjunction with Mars and Saturn. If it's below the sun, it can only be seen in the afternoon, because you have to wait for the sun to go down. So here we have Saturn and Venus, and we're looking for Jupiter. And here we go. There is a second occurrence of the star of Julius. Amazing, isn't it? Now this happened on February 14th of minus 41, so February 14th of 42 BC. And the sighting of the star of Julius was seen before he was deified. And he was deified deification on January 1st, 42 BC, what they think is 42 BC. But that cannot be, because the star Julius was seen for the second time on February. So, so this date must be shifted also. So all of the list of Roman consuls shift down by 1 year. So when you see the 1st of January of 42 BC, it's actually the 1st of January of 41 BC. So the star of Julius was seen for the second time on February 14th of minus 41, 42 BC. And he was deified on, as time passed by, on the 1st of 40 BC. Minus 40 BC, which is 41 BC. So this proves that the entire list has shifted down. To recap, I have shown that the list of the consuls list is shifted ahead by, must be shifted by 1 year in time. We have shown that Julius Caesar was assassinated in March 23rd of 43 BC instead of 44 BC. So all the list needs to be shifted down. What's interesting, March 23rd was the vernal equinox. I don't know if that has any significance. Two beings were observed when his pyre was lit on April 1st, 43 BC instead of 44 BC. The star of Julius was observed on April 8th of 43 BC instead of 44 BC. And the star of Julius was observed a second time in the evening. That was kind of interesting to me. Before Julius Caesar's deification on February 14th, 42 BC. So the deification must have happened on January 1st, 41 BC instead of 42 BC like it's normally believed. And there's more. Next we'll talk about the Julian calendar, the starting date of the Julian calendar. And you'll see why that date was chosen. Now, there we go. If you want to continue watching these videos, I have placed the link, let me see, this finger, up here for the next video, and down here a link to the playlist. Please subscribe over here because the best thing you can do to help me is subscribe and watch the videos. So thanks for watching.